My name is Grace Morgan. I'm 32 years old. And I never imagined that coming home a day early would become the turning point that completely changed my life. After 3 exhausting days at a biomedical research conference in Seattle, all I wanted was a quiet night, phone turned off, lying in my own bed, leaving behind everything about cancer cells, immunotherapy, and high-level academic debates. But as the taxi turned onto the peaceful street in suburban Portland, where I'd lived for over 6 years, the first thing I noticed was that something felt off. The streetlights were still on, the trees still swayed gently in the breeze, but unfamiliar cars lined both sides of the road. A red SUV that looked oddly familiar, a pickup truck with Florida plates, and right at my front gate, a giant balloon arch and a white banner screaming in my face. Family means forever, our home, our heart. I froze, clutching my suitcase handle like it was the only thing keeping me from exploding. What is going on here? I muttered, nearly whispering into the darkness. The house I legally owned 50% of, the house I poured all of my research fellowship savings into, buying it with my younger brother, had become the centerpiece of a party. A party that clearly did not include me on the guest list. I rolled my suitcase across the lawn, stepping over bits of wrapping paper and plastic cups. Laughter echoed from the living room. The air was thick with the smell of grilled meat and cheap perfume. I opened the door. It was unlocked. Inside, chaos disguised as a family reunion. It took me a full minute to realize I was standing in my own living room. Only, everything had been taken over. Kids I had never met were bouncing on my couch. A woman whose name I couldn't recall had her feet propped on the coffee table where I usually kept my work laptop. Someone had removed a painting I'd done back in college and replaced it with a group family photo, one I wasn't in. And then a voice rang out from the stairs. Grace? Oh my God, Grace. She's back. I turned to see my cousin Darlene, who I hadn't seen since my father's funeral 7 years ago. She stood there with a champagne flute in hand, eyes wide in shock. And, like dominoes falling, the entire house fell into silence, followed by whispers rippling like waves. She's back. Grace? I thought she was coming tomorrow. She lives here? I thought this was Kyle's place. Kyle, my brother, appeared from the kitchen in an apron, holding a tray of mini sandwiches. He froze at the sight of me at the door, his face turning pale like he'd just seen the police. Grace, I thought you were flying in tomorrow. I looked at him, a chill running down my spine. I cut my trip short. Maybe you forgot to send an invite. Before I could take another step, my mother, Lorraine Morgan, appeared from the dining room, holding a tray of cookies and that forced smile I'd known since I was a teenager. Oh, Grace, she said, walking toward me like nothing was wrong. I thought you were flying in Monday? I looked at her, then over at Kyle. 30 years old, freelance audio engineer, but always introducing himself as a home-based producer. I didn't answer her question. I didn't need to. Lorraine lightly patted my shoulder, her eyes scanning the crowd of people, trying to act casual while sneaking glances over the rims of plastic wine glasses. We just wanted to create some bonding time. We knew you were busy, so we didn't want to bother you. They didn't want to bother me? While 99 people were celebrating on the hardwood floor I paid to replace last winter? And Kyle, my mom continued, gesturing proudly at my brother, really stepped up. He made all the food, planned everything, decorated. The girl's got talent, right? The girl, Kyle. It's always been like that. Ever since we were kids. Kyle was the creative angel in Mom's eyes. And me, the oldest daughter, only existed when there were report cards to show off or financial help to ask for. Back in 5th grade, when I won first prize in the state science fair, Mom barely smiled and said, "Don't let grades make you arrogant." But when Kyle painted a crooked oil portrait, she framed it and hung it in the living room, saying, "The girl has raw artistic talent." I could list hundreds of examples like that. Kyle breaks a bowl, Mom says I probably didn't place it right. Kyle skips school. Mom says he's just exploring himself. Earn a full scholarship to college, Mom says. Well, that's nice. Throughout high school, I worked part-time, saving every penny to buy a laptop for school. Kyle, he got a new electric guitar. Mom wrote a check to help him relieve stress. When I got accepted into the National Biomedical Research Program at the University of Michigan, only 3 people chosen in the country. Mom shrugged. I worry about you. If you bury yourself in experiments all the time, who's gonna marry you? And Kyle, he wins a county-level DJ contest and the whole family celebrates like he just discovered a cure. I thought when Dad died, Mom might finally change, that she'd start seeing me for who I was. But no. After the funeral, when I offered to help with financial paperwork, Mom declined and said, I'll have Kyle do it. She understands things better. Kyle, who once thought health insurance was a government scam, was more trusted than me, a federally funded biomedical researcher. You're not gonna say anything? Mom asked, like my sudden appearance was my fault. I took a deep breath. If I say something, you'll just call me too sensitive, like last Christmas when I gave you a custom engraved watch and you said, oh, Kyle gave me a cactus, so cute. The room tightened. You could cut the tension with a butter knife. Kyle shrugged, playing innocent. Why do you always have to make everything so serious? Science should be fun, right? I turned to face my brother, the one who had hijacked my home for a party I didn't even know about and still had the nerve to play the generous host. So, I said, my voice calm but each word slicing the air, who gave you permission to use my room, my kitchen, my bed without a single text? Kyle blinked. I didn't think you were home. I was just borrowing. It's a shared house. I didn't answer because I knew this wasn't a misunderstanding. This was a game. And I'd been dealt out from the start. After my father, Charles Morgan, died suddenly from a stroke one cold winter morning, our old house in suburban Portland quickly became a financial burden for my mother, Lorraine. The 3-story house with the gray tile roof, built in the 80s, was already old and in desperate need of a full renovation. My mother couldn't afford the property taxes, repairs, and living expenses. She had even considered selling it and moving into a smaller rental apartment. But I, stupidly hopeful that family could be mended, proposed a different plan. Kyle and I would buy the house from her as co-owners. It sounded fair on paper. Kyle would live on the first floor, I would live upstairs, my childhood bedroom and the attic, which I had remodeled into a home office. My mom would move into the in-law suite, an old garage space we converted into a mini apartment, complete with a kitchen, bathroom, and private entrance. We shared the backyard, the washer and dryer, and some maintenance costs. My portion of the funds came from a postdoctoral research fellowship and savings from my time at the Salk Institute. I also paid for the entire roof replacement, a new electrical system, and redesigned the second floor to allow for independent living. Kyle? He used money loaned interest-free by his then-future in-laws. He contributed nothing to the renovations except for a massive leather chair he parked in the downstairs living room and called a conversation piece. I still remember the day we signed the paperwork at my attorney's office. Teresa O'Brien, an Irish-American woman whose voice sounded like forged steel. She insisted on having everything documented and notarized. She looked me dead in the eyes and said, Grace, family is family. But money and property need to be protected by the law. You're not signing because you don't trust Kyle. You're signing so you don't get hurt if your trust is ever broken. Back then, I thought Teresa was too cold and cynical. Now I realized she was just someone who had lived long enough to see what family can become when property is involved. The co-ownership agreement stated clearly, neither party may use the other's private living space without consent. Any gathering of more than 15 people must be approved in writing. Each party is financially responsible for their respective living areas. Major repairs require mutual agreement. I stored both hard copies and digital backups on 3 different platforms. This was supposed to be airtight. What I didn't expect was that my own mother would be the first to violate the boundaries. It started with Lorraine bringing a slice of apple pie upstairs. No knocking, no texts. Then came the unannounced walkthroughs during my Zoom meetings with the institute director. When I brought it up gently, she just waved me off. "You're always making a big deal out of nothing." Then came Kyle. Stephanie's birthday party was supposed to stay in the backyard, but guests spilled onto the second-floor hallway. When I confronted him, he winked and said, "You're not even home on weekends. No one's bothered. It's our house, right?" I clenched my jaw. Every time he said, "our," I knew what he meant was, I endure, he enjoys. I let a lot slide. Until today. When I came back from the conference and saw nearly 100 strangers trampling my rug, drinking from my glassware, and sleeping in a room I had curated, detail by detail, I knew every line had been crossed. I pulled Kyle aside near the staircase, where the thick glass muffled the noise. My mother was still chatting cheerfully with distant cousins. Stephanie posed for selfies in front of my bookshelf, the one that used to hold my research on white blood cells. "I'm not letting this slide like before," I said, staring straight into Kyle's eyes. "Grace, come on," he shrugged, looking tired. "You shut yourself off and then wonder why people don't include you. I tried to make this family feel whole again. You should be grateful." I laughed, not from amusement, but from sheer disbelief. "You used my name to organize a party. You let the family believe I agreed to it. You let people sleep in my bed, violating every term of our agreement. And now, you think I should thank you?" Kyle said nothing, but his expression turned sharp, impatient. Then he dropped the final bomb, without an ounce of shame. "You're barely here anyway. Stephanie and I are thinking about starting a family. Maybe you should consider selling your share." That was the moment I knew. I'd been a pawn in a game I never even got to play. I didn't respond to Kyle, because I had already started piecing things together, and this was no accidental overlap. This was a plan. A deliberate, calculated move. I pulled out my phone and reread Kyle's last message from 3 weeks ago, when I told him about my trip to Seattle. "Don't worry, that weekend will be quiet. The house will be spotless when you get back." Quiet? Spotless? When I was standing in a crowd, my bed slept in by strangers, my kitchen turned into a buffet, and my carefully arranged photo frames replaced with Morgan Family Reunion 2024 collages, without me in a single one. I walked upstairs. No questions, no explanations. The stairs were cluttered with suitcases, jackets, and kids' backpacks. A Hello Kitty pillow lay in the middle of the hallway, next to a rolling water bottle. My room, no longer mine. There was a deep indentation on my mattress. The floral pink sheets weren't mine. The cheap air freshener overpowered the lavender scent I usually used before bed. My desk had been cleared. Research papers, books, protein models, all shoved into a plastic bin in the corner, barely covered by a throw blanket. On the desk was a new photo frame. Kyle and Stephanie with a scrawled message. "Thanks for giving up the space. Love, the family kiddos." I walked into my private bathroom. The air was still damp. On the floor, shards of glass from the white iris perfume bottle my grandmother gave me, the last gift before she passed. My chest clenched. I bent down, picking up the pieces one by one into a tissue, as if salvaging fragments of my own childhood. Then came the sound of little feet in the hallway and the door flew open. A girl I didn't know poked her head in and shouted, "The lady's done in the bathroom, my turn now." I stared at her. Mud on her sneakers, cartoon stickers on her iPad. "What's your name, sweetie?" "Amélie," she squealed and dashed off like the wind. I didn't know Amélie. I didn't know why she had free rein in what was supposed to be my personal sanctuary. I collapsed onto the bed, clearly no longer mine, and tried to control my breathing. Under the pillow, I found a purple notebook. My antibody research journal. Now covered in pencil doodles, hi and family in block letters, and a torn-out page. That's when I snapped. I walked downstairs, face blank, cutting through the crowd. My mother was telling some great aunts about how Grace used to love Barbies, even though I'd told her countless times I only played with Legos. "I need to talk, now," I cut in. My voice was low but clear. Lorraine paused, visibly annoyed. Can it wait until after dessert, Grace? No, now. She exhaled. Fine, laundry room, 5 minutes. Kyle, Stephanie, and my mother sat around the small table in the laundry room, which used to be where my dad kept his toolbox. I remained standing. How long have you been planning this party? I asked bluntly. My mother shrugged. Kyle replied, since December, but we wanted to keep it a surprise. And the surprise was me getting shut out of my own house? Stephanie jumped in, her tone sharp. We didn't think you'd mind. You're hardly ever here. And you're not really close with the family, so that justifies letting strangers sleep in my bed, break my things, and draw in my research documents? I said, each word like a blade. My mother folded her arms. Don't overreact. It's just a few days. And they're all family. You should be glad the house feels alive instead of like some sterile lab. I looked at them. 3 faces, each reacting differently. Defensive, dismissive, smug. And I understood. I wasn't part of them. I was a utility. My money, my labor, my space, all seen as available for use. I turned to leave but paused and looked Kyle in the eye. Fine, you want to play house? Go ahead. But don't forget, I have rules. And this game, I never agreed to play. I walked out of the laundry room with my heart pounding and ice in my veins. The party downstairs continued as if nothing happened. Soft music played from the Bluetooth speakers I bought last year, glasses clinked, and laughter mingled with loud, over-the-top stories. As if a legal co-owner of this house was some uninvited stranger crashing the celebration. I headed back to my room, this time with a much clearer goal: to find out the real reason behind this accidental exclusion. My gut told me this wasn't just poor planning or a family communication error. It was calculated. I inspected every corner of what used to be my room, now warped into a crash pad for people I'd never met. And then, while checking the closet for my winter coat, I spotted something wedged beneath a suitcase. A manila file folder. No label, no markings, but when I opened it, my eyes froze. Inside were pages of financial documents bearing the names Kyle Morgan and Stephanie Keller, bank statements, credit card debt reports, loan rejection letters from 2 major banks, all freshly printed, clear as day. There was even a personal budget breakdown, which I was sure Stephanie had created. Credit card debt, $42,300. Failed investment in mobile surround sound system, negative $18,000. Expected amount from sale of Grace's share of the house, $160,000. Final note. Must finalize negotiation before Q2 to avoid default. I sank onto the bed, or rather, the bed they had temporarily requisitioned as part of their financial rescue mission. Now everything made sense. This wasn't just a reunion, it was a stage. An elaborate performance where Kyle and Stephanie played the loving couple adored by extended family, caring for their aging mother, hosting a warm, heartfelt gathering, all to craft the image of being the true homeowners before pressuring me to sell my legal share. Maybe they thought if the whole family stood behind them, I'd feel guilty about breaking up the family. Maybe they believed I'd be too soft to resist the fake hugs, forced handshakes, and polite smiles from distant relatives. But they forgot who I was. I'm the one who earned 3 academic scholarships on my own, lived in a ground-floor dorm with no AC for 2 years just to save research funds. I'm the one who stayed awake for 36 straight hours to finish a biomedical report before submission. And I don't sell what I bled and worked for, just to patch the holes created by someone else's reckless living. I closed the folder, tucked it into my bag alongside my laptop and the legal notebook containing our co-ownership contract that Teresa once insisted I sign. When I entered the kitchen, Stephanie was directing a group of Morgan women arranging desserts. She spotted me and forced a sweet smile. Grace, can you bring down a few more plates? Everyone's waiting for that cheesecake you made last year. I kept my voice even. By the way, I found some interesting documents in my room. Thanks for keeping things so tidy. Stephanie stiffened. For a brief second, her eyes flicked to Kyle, chatting with Uncle Tom nearby. Documents? What do you mean? She asked, trying to sound innocent. Oh, financial documents for you and Kyle, I replied, including the failed investment and your note about negotiating the purchase of Grace's share. Very detailed. Stephanie's face went pale. Conversations nearby paused. The Grace, she began. I raised a hand. It's fine, I'm not going to make a scene. In fact, I'm glad I found them now. Gives me time to scan and send them to my lawyer tomorrow. Turned and walked away, leaving behind a kitchen engulfed in dead silence. Kyle followed me into the foyer, gently grabbing my arm. Grace, wait, I can explain. You don't need to, the documents already did. You're seriously bringing lawyers into this? This is family. I stopped and looked at my brother. The same boy who used to chase me around the garden when we were kids, now a grown man willing to sacrifice his own sister to preserve his image as the homeowner. Family doesn't trap each other, Kyle. And if someone forgot that, it's time I reminded them. I didn't yell, I didn't curse, I didn't slam my fist down like a villain in a movie. At the one thing I knew would truly rattle them, I stayed silent and started compiling evidence. That night, while muffled karaoke bled through the walls from the living room, I sat alone in my small upstairs apartment, phone in hand, capturing photo after photo of every intrusion. My desk, covered in snack wrappers. My office turned into a Lego playground for 3 kids. My bed, with unfamiliar floral sheets. Broken glass still beneath the sink. And most importantly, the forgotten financial folder. Each image was time-stamped and location tagged, backed up to iCloud and a personal hard drive. I recorded every detail like I was documenting a lab report, precise, neutral, emotionless. I turned my outrage into data. The next morning at 8 a.m., I sat in a small cafe just 2 blocks from home. Strong Wi-Fi, strong coffee, and 0 relatives. I started a video call with my attorney, Teresa O'Brien. She appeared on screen, hair pulled back, eyes sharp as ever. Grace, long time no see, are you doing okay? Somewhat, but I need to act immediately. Something's happened with the house, and my co-ownership agreement has been seriously violated. I summarized everything in 5 minutes. No rambling, no drama. Teresa didn't interrupt, just nodded, took notes, and occasionally frowned. When I finished, she asked one question. Do you have photos and proof? I opened my laptop, shared my screen, and showed her the neatly organized folders. Violation of personal privacy. Unauthorized use of private spaces. Damage to personal property. Financial evidence, and potential motive. She nodded, a slight smirk forming. Well done, Grace. Very scientific. You don't just have grounds. You have a logical narrative leading to your conclusion. I don't want to blow things up, I said plainly, but I won't let myself get pushed out of something I built with blood and sweat. We won't blow it up in a loud way, Teresa replied. We'll blow it up in a way that makes them afraid of the law and the truth. Within 24 hours, I received a draft of the official email Teresa had prepared. Subject: Notice of breach of co-ownership agreement. To Kyle Morgan, co-owner. CC, Stephanie Keller, associated party. BCC Teresa O'Brien, legal counsel. Contents: detailed clauses that had been violated. Attached photo evidence. Later, request for response within 5 business days. Notice of potential litigation if no resolution was reached. I read it 3 times before hitting send. It felt like moving the first chess piece on a very deliberate board. No screaming, no drama, just the beginning of order. That afternoon, I went to the bank. Updated account permissions related to property ownership. Then to the home insurance office, requested all communication go through legal counsel from now on. That night, I changed the Wi-Fi password, installed a personal lock for the second-floor unit, and hired a security service to install mini cameras at the entryway, stairwell, and backyard. As I adjusted one of the cameras, there was a soft knock at my door. It was Aunt Aline, my dad's younger sister, and one of the few relatives who'd written to congratulate me when I got the Michigan Fellowship. "I know you weren't invited," she said softly. "I'm sorry. I asked Kyle multiple times, but he kept saying you agreed to be away. I thought it was odd, but now I understand." I gave her a small smile, the first in days. "It's okay, Aunt Elaine. At least someone sees what's really going on." Before she left, she handed me a small box. "This was your father's. He asked me to hold on to it, said if the day ever came that you felt cornered, you'd know what to do with it." Inside was an old photo. Me at age 9, standing on a stage with my first science award. Beside me was my dad, hand on my shoulder, beaming with pride. On the back, in his handwriting, "My daughter, remember? When silence becomes your weapon, intellect becomes your armor." I tucked the photo into my wallet and returned to my desk. The party was still going in the backyard, but the real battle had moved to a different arena. One where I made the rules. 3 days after sending the legal email to Kyle and Stephanie, I got a call from an international number I initially assumed was a mistake. "Hello, Miss Grace Morgan. This is Dr. Lena Vogt from the International Medical Research Consortium in Lucerne, Switzerland. We just saw your presentation from last week's Seattle conference, and honestly, we're incredibly impressed." I could hardly believe what I was hearing. Lena continued, her voice touched with a soft German accent. "IMRC is launching a new initiative on immune cell targeting platforms. We'd like you to lead the research team for a 3-year term beginning next quarter." She added that they would cover relocation costs, housing, visa support, and even offer a monthly stipend. "So you can focus entirely on the science." I sat in stunned silence, but deep inside, a quiet fire lit up. "Can you give us an answer within 2 weeks? I think," I paused, then said softly, "I know what I need to do." After the call, I sat in the same upstairs apartment I once called home, now only filled with a sense of violation, loss, and fracture. I didn't cry. I just took a deep breath, then opened a new email. Subject: Urgent request for property management consultation. To Elite Property Services, Portland. Body: I'm seeking consultation on leasing the apartment unit I own in a co-owned property. I need professional management with clear legal oversight. No direct contact with the co-owner is no longer desired. I'm leaving the U.S. in 30 days. Earliest meeting request possible. 2 days later, I met with the company's representative, Mrs. Carmen Ellis, a sharp, no-nonsense middle-aged woman. "We've handled co-ownership nightmares worse than this," she said after reviewing the ownership contract I brought. "But this? You've clearly had your privacy abused." "My goal now is to turn this place into a source of income, not emotional weight," I replied. "And I don't want Kyle's name involved in any conversations again." "Then we'll let the law and the contract speak for you." Carmen inspected the second-floor unit, documenting the damage from the party: scratched hardwood floors, loose outlets, and the lingering smell of someone else's perfume. She shook her head. "People can wreck a space, but they can't take away its value. Not if you know how to rebuild it." I nodded. For the first time in weeks, I felt in control again. Within 1 week, Carmen listed the unit. A visiting lecturer from UCLA was chosen as the tenant. Polite, single, a molecular biology professor, no pets. They would move in after my flight. As for Kyle, the moment he found out I'd handed over operations to the management company, he lost it. "You're seriously putting a stranger in here? You're just gonna skip town and abandon everything?" I responded with a single text. "I'm not abandoning anything. I'm doing what's right for me, for the house, and for the law." My mom called directly, her voice shaky. "You're going to Switzerland? What about family?" I wasn't angry. And I wasn't soft anymore either. Family will still be here, if they learn respect. As for me, I'll live on, unbound by guilt someone else tried to place on me. That evening, I started packing drawer by drawer. Research documents, Dad's photo frame, the dried spring bouquet. One of the few things Stephanie hadn't tossed. I texted Teresa. "He's finalized. I'm ready to go. but I'll still be watching everything. She replied in under a minute. Proud of you. And don't worry, we're not letting them take advantage again. Before bed, I opened a folder on my laptop labeled Lucerne Future, the name of the new project, Aurora, short for Advanced Understanding of Receptor-Optimized Antibodies. New light, new journey. And I knew, this time, I wasn't running away. I was moving forward, on my terms. Less than 24 hours after signing the lease agreement with Elite Property Services, my phone blew up with messages. First, from Kyle. What the hell are you doing? I just got an email from the management company saying you handed over control of the second floor. You really let strangers live here? And my mom. Grace, you've really hurt me. I just heard from Kyle. Did you have to be so cold? What about family? Bin message 3, 4, 5. At one point, I had 17 missed calls within 10 minutes. From my mom, from Kyle, from relatives I didn't even have saved in my contacts. They cycled between anger, blame, and playing the victim. You're really kicking mom out? Kyle. What did I do wrong? It was all a misunderstanding, Stephanie. You're stressing me out so much. The doctor says my blood pressure is up. Mom. If you had just talked instead of lawyering up, none of this would have happened. Mom again. I read every message. No reaction, no rage, no emotion. I just saved them. Every line, every call, every psychological jab disguised as family concern. Opened a new email folder, Family Communications, Ongoing, and forwarded everything to Teresa O'Brien, my attorney. That evening, while sitting in my usual cafe wrapping up paperwork for the Switzerland move, I got a call I didn't expect. Mom. I didn't answer, but she left a voicemail over 2 minutes long. Grace. Please, don't go silent on me. I know I'm not perfect, I just wanted to keep the family together. If you want to leave, fine, but please, don't bring strangers into your father's house. You know how sad he would be. I listened to every word but gave no reply. Instead, I drafted a clear, formal email. From Grace Morgan to Lorraine Morgan. Subject: Response regarding ownership and operations of second floor. Thank you for reaching out. I confirm that all actions I've taken concerning the second floor unit, of which I am the legal co-owner, have been conducted in accordance with the terms of our signed agreement. I am currently working with a professional property management firm to ensure all processes are transparent, secure, and legally compliant. If you have any questions, please submit them in writing for review and response via my attorney, Ms. Teresa O'Brien. Wishing you well, Grace. An hour later, a furious message from Kyle lit up my screen. So that's it. You choose outsiders over family. You always think you're better than everyone. Don't forget, this house isn't yours alone. I didn't reply. I just flagged the message and took a screenshot, saved it to the file. The next day, Carmen sent her report. The tenants signed the lease and paid the full deposit. Move-in date, 12 days from now. All information encrypted and protected by the new security system. Your unit is now a fully independent income-generating asset, Carmen wrote, and no one has the right to interfere without legal documentation. I leaned back in my chair, looking out the cafe window. It was drizzling softly in Portland. Like thoughts that wouldn't quite settle. I thought of Dad. If he were still alive, would he have supported me? Or would he have been disappointed, thinking I was the one tearing the family apart? Then I remembered the look in his eyes in that old photo, the one I always keep in my wallet. That wasn't a look of disappointment. It was a look of trust. The kind of trust that said his daughter knew exactly what she was doing. That night, I sent one final email before bed. From Grace Morgan to Kyle Morgan. Subject: Shared property. Update. Bio? I've received the recent messages from you and Mom. I understand this change may be uncomfortable. However, I want to reiterate that all of my actions are based on our legally signed ownership agreement and are being handled by a professional management firm. I will not engage in discussions driven by emotion or personal sentiment. If you have anything to address, please do so via email or through your legal representative. Wishing you and Stephanie peace. Grace. I put my phone down. A notification popped up. New message from Mom. 12 missed calls. Urgent. I turned off notifications. I didn't need to react anymore. I had chosen my path, and I wasn't looking back. I had been living in Lucerne for nearly 8 months when Kyle's first email arrived. No subject line, no greeting, just this. Emily was born yesterday, 2:18 a.m. Mom and baby are doing great. Thanks for not breaking the lease. Thanks for not making things worse. I still don't know if I deserve forgiveness, but now I understand more. Having a child changes everything. I sat by my office window, watching light snow fall outside the IMRC Research Center, overwhelmed by mixed emotions. I didn't respond right away, but I opened the photo attached, a tiny newborn girl wrapped in a pink blanket in Stephanie's arms. And Kyle, my brother who once saw me as an obstacle, now looking at his daughter like the world had just been reborn. A few days later, Mom called. I didn't pick up as usual, but this time she didn't leave a long voicemail. Just a single message. I'm not sure I got it right raising you both. Maybe I did lean too much toward one side, but I'm learning how to listen again. When you're ready, I'd like to talk, not to defend myself, but to understand you. I read that message over and over, not because I instantly believed it, but because, for once, it didn't reek of guilt trips or manipulation. It sounded real. A few weeks later, Teresa called from Portland. Grace, Kyle just made an offer to buy your share of the house, this time at full market value, no requests for discounts. And, she paused for a beat, they're willing to accept any additional terms you find reasonable. I leaned back in my chair. It was finally happening. Funds transferred to my private account, not through the joint asset. And, I added, eyes fixed on my notepad, 2 conditions. Go ahead. I want $50,000 allocated to a scholarship fund named after my father, Charles Morgan, for final year med students in Portland who are in financial need. Teresa nodded. 2. My mother will retain lifetime residence rights to the ground floor in-law suite, rent-free, without pressure or control. This must be explicitly included in the new contract. Absolutely, Teresa replied. I'll draft that clause with the strongest legal language. I hung up, feeling a weight lift, not because of the money, not even because of getting justice, but because I had turned loss into something meaningful, not just for me, but for others too. A month later, I flew to Portland to sign the final documents. A short trip, no big announcements. I told no one but Teresa. The signing took place in a neutral law office. Kyle wore a wrinkled dress shirt, looking tired but composed. Stephanie wasn't with him. He didn't look me in the eye for long, but once we finished signing, he handed me an envelope. From Mom, she asked me to give it to you directly. I took it, didn't open it right away, but as I turned to leave, I heard Kyle's voice. Grace. I turned slightly. I didn't understand you. I thought you were cold, too logical. But now, with Emily, I get it. What it means to do the right thing, even when no one agrees with you. I didn't say anything, just gave a small nod. That was enough. That evening, I opened Mom's letter in my hotel room. Inside was a handwritten note. Slanted lines, faint blue ink. My daughter. I spent too long believing that those who sacrifice should stay silent. I thought you were strong, so you didn't need recognition. But I was wrong. I'm proud of you, and that pride should not have come this late. Thank you for not letting me live out my days in regret and bitterness. Thank you for still thinking of me, even when I forgot to think of you for too many years. If there's ever a chance to start again, I hope I get to call you home once more. Mom. I folded the letter and tucked it into my wallet, right next to Dad's photo. And I didn't cry. I just smiled. Because I knew I had done the right thing, not for anyone else, but for me. One April morning, I stood by the eighth-floor window of the IMRC Research Institute in Lucerne, holding a warm cup of coffee, gazing at the mist-covered Alps. This was my new home, not the place I was born, but a place I chose, where I was heard, and above all, where I was allowed to be myself. My office is flooded with natural light. The walls are lined with project boards for Aurora, the immune navigation platform I lead alongside researchers from Kenya, Sweden, Brazil, and South Korea. We don't share a nationality, but we share a passion to discover something that could change human lives. Every afternoon, I eat Gruyere cheese sandwiches with my colleagues in the small garden behind the institute. On Friday evenings, Lucia, a neurologist from Brazil, and I bike around Lake Lucerne, talking about research and the strange loneliness of those who were once forgotten by their own families. Here, I'm not Grace, the girl always missing from the family photo. I'm Dr. Grace Morgan, the one invited to speak at the European Science Forum on Clinical Immunology, the one whose students from 14 different countries call mentor. The same person who, 3 years ago, was excluded from a party held inside her own home. My relationship with my family? Not perfect, but no longer a battlefield. My mother, now living peacefully in the legally protected in-law suite, sends me emails once a month. Short notes, usually starting with, "I planted more tomatoes today," or "Emily is crawling now." No more complaints, no more guilt trips. Just clumsy but sincere efforts to say, "I'm learning how to be a mother again." Kyle sends photos of his daughter through Google Photos, each one with a short caption like, "Emily ate broccoli today," or "She loves classical music, just like you." I don't reply often, but I read everything, and sometimes I send back a single emoji. Sometimes that's enough. I've never returned to live in Portland, but I haven't erased my family from my life either. I've simply moved the relationship to a different format, one with boundaries, conditions, and the right to say no if respect isn't present. In June, I received a letter from Portland Medical School. The Charles Morgan Memorial Scholarship had officially been awarded to its first recipient, a young woman named Alina Tran, Vietnamese-American, a top-performing final-year med student, researching antibody therapy in lung cancer treatment. At the end of a clinic, her personal pharmacist ordered a triple dose of antibody therapy in lung cancer. I laughed when I read her profile. Decisive, quiet but grounded, using science as a way to survive chaos. I saw my 22-year-old self in her. And for the first time, I saw my father's legacy come alive in the truest way, not in a framed photo on the wall, but in quiet, steady footsteps forward. On weekend nights, I sit on my balcony and write passages for the book I'm finishing. Anatomy of a Home, a journey away from the place called family to return to oneself. It's not a revenge book, and it's not a tear-drinkered memoir. It's simply the story of a woman who was once treated as invisible, but refused to disappear. And if someone asked me, "Grace, do you regret it, leaving them, leaving that place?" I'd say, I didn't leave. I stepped out. Because sometimes, to truly find home, you have to dare to close the door on the place that made you feel lost. And only then can you find the courage to build a real home. Not from shared blood, but from shared respect, recognition, and the values you were once denied. My story doesn't end with a reunion hug or a tearful moment in a family kitchen. It ends with a glass of white wine on a balcony in Lucerne, the sunset casting golden light over the mountains, and an email congratulating me for being selected as the keynote speaker at next year's European Medical Conference. Family? Still there. But now I know some ties should only be reconnected with sincerity, not sacrifice. The story of Grace Morgan is a powerful reminder that not all family bonds built on blood provide safety and respect. In real life, many people are hurt by those closest to them, but hesitate to set boundaries for fear of being seen as ungrateful. But like Grace, when we have the courage to protect our worth through reason and resolve, we don't just rediscover ourselves. We open a new chapter, where real connection is built on respect and honesty. What do you think of Grace Morgan's journey? Have you ever experienced something similar? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to follow the channel for more heartfelt and honest stories about family and life.